Wisconsin Badgers back. Eric and Marty,
Interviewing our special guest.
our very special guest, the very first interviewee, Jim CONLEY. Eric and Marty, retired detectives. Jim CONLEY, retired Janesville police officer. Not coincidentally, a friend of Marty's. Funny story, when I started at the police department, you were my training officer in 1995. And as you said before previously, you did my background investigation. Remember when you came to my house?
Sure do.
And I was sleeping because it was third shift. I was working third shift, so I was asleep. It was daytime, of course, because you worked during the day. Jennifer came and got me up out of bed. I come out. She didn't bother to tell me that she was mopping the kitchen floor. So I hit the kitchen floor and went, wow, just like on my ass, just crashed
Right in front of.
right in front of Marty. And Marty's sitting there just like that, looking just like that.
Say,
like,
oh,
you fucking dumbass.
Are you all right?
You dumbass. Do I need to call an ambulance? You want me to come back later? Then I find out that you guys grew up together in Chicago, or the
suburbs.
The suburbs of Chicago.
Yes,
that's true. So, yeah, Jim CONLEY, very first guest on Wisconsin Badges podcast. And why don't you tell us who you think you are?
Well, I don't think we have enough time for that because I am multi-dimensional, probably multi-personality.
You do have multiple personalities.
I'm just a crazy dude. No, it's I'm a product of my background. Grew up in the burbs, born in Chicago. I can claim that. Resurrection Hospital.
Yes.
We were living in Des Plaines, northwest suburb at the time. Then we moved to St. Louis.
You live in St. Louis?
Yes, I did. See, not many people know that. And then we moved back to the Chicago area. Lived in Hubbard Woods, a few other little places, and then settled in Park Ridge, Illinois.
Park Ridge, that's a fancy.
It is fancy, but my parents were very poor. My dad was a salesman, so
I didn't see it going that way.
we were struggling. And then
now, when you say very poor, what do we mean?
in comparison to the general population of Park Ridge,
Comparison to the Allstats?
they were poor. Especially when my parents separated when I was 9 and got divorced when I was 10. Then we relied solely on
Was that your fault?
on my mother's income. Well, it's funny that you say that because
Because I think it was.
I'm going to digress slightly.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I spoke with a young lady who is like a homeopathic healer, and I told her that I occasionally have trouble with stuttering, you know.
Yep.
And she said, now there are some, some natural remedies that you can take, but she said, I'll tell you one thing. You had issues with your dad, something happened, or whatever, some kind of trauma in your life. She said stuttering is mostly done by males, and mostly have relationship issues due to divorce, physical abuse, or whatever, which causes guys to stutter. Really? And I said, that is fascinating, because this is the first time I met her. She didn't know me from Adam, or she didn't know me from Eric or Marty. She just met me, and she pulled that right out. She said, it's very, very common.
You met this gypsy where?
Oh, come on.
Did she reach your palms?
She was not an Irish traveler or an Irish
We'll check with the
rover,
8-ball and see if...
right.
But she knew right off the bat that something like that probably happened. And I told her, my parents got divorced.
So that was about 8, 9, 10?
Yeah, I mean, my parents had troubles early on, and then when I was 9, they separated. When I was 10, they got divorced. And there was only one other student in my whole grade that I'm aware of whose parents were, divorced.
Yeah, back in those days.
Back in those days.
No,
yeah.
You're right. I was the only one with a father who died. And I swear that the staff and no one knew what to do with that. I mean, they didn't know what to say. They tried to ignore it. They just didn't know but I mean, all the kids knew there was something different.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
yeah.
it was a similar experience, and since we
And I
lived
think in
a block
today's
away from
world,
each other.
they mobilize, like the schools,
Well, first of all, you're in the majority now if your parents are
Well,
either divorced
yeah,
or separated.
I
So
suppose-
that's
yeah.
part of it. They should mobilize. You come from an attacked family? Let's get some people over here.
Right,
Let's,
yeah.
let's see what we can do about
What's
this.
wrong with
There's
this
apparently
child?
some problem.
Your dad lives with you, with your mom, in the same house? Okay, so Des Plaines, not Duplains.
It's not Duplains, no.
All right. And then what?
And then, so I then grew up in a single parent household and went to it was all Catholic. I assume they were all Catholic, but a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. Went to 3 colleges before I finally got a diploma. I'm very proud of that. And so, yes, I have a bachelor's in liberal arts with an emphasis in English and U.S. history pre-Civil War.
Really?
Yeah. So
U.S. history pre-Civil War.
pre-Civil
Who
War.
was the 10th president?
The 10th president. It should be right around Lincoln's time. But,
Check with the 8 ball.
You can use the 8 ball whenever you stop.
I don't know. I think Lincoln was 16, but
that's right, 16.
That's-
That's
yeah,
right. I'm a few years later, but
I would not have an answer for that. So that doesn't exactly sound like you set yourself up for an illustrious career in law enforcement. What happened?
Well, I was either going to be a teacher or a cop. And our dear friend Martin got me to take one law enforcement course when I was going to Oakton Community College.
That's all it took?
Took one course, and I said, this is for me.
This is it? Okay.
Anything where you get to wear a uniform, carry a gun.
Drive fast.
Drive
And we'll get to
fast.
that part later.
I'm
Yeah,
down
yeah.
with that. That's right.
All right.
So that was the fascination for you, was the uniform and the gun, and you were never interested in the military?
No. My dad was, from what I remember, he told me a few stories. He was in the Seabees.
Oh, okay.
And they built bridges before the Army got there. They
Yeah.
constructed the bridges and stuff. And since he was a shithead, I don't think I really wanted to, carry on.
You want to build that bridges?
No, I didn't want to build
You
any
burn bridges.
Right.
That sounds like he did a few little burning of bridges himself. So
Yeah.
it wasn't really building bridges. Okay, so
Okay.
where do you want to go? I was thinking, so what did you do before you went into your law enforcement career? And then how did you transition to law enforcement?
Well, before my law enforcement career, I worked basically 2 jobs. I was an inventory analyst at Crane Packing Company in Morton Grove. And I was ordering parts for a company that made mechanical seals. And I said, boy, is this boring.
Boy, is this what?
Boring. It was horribly boring. I sat at a desk. I had a microfilm fiche and a very basic computer, because this was 1976.
Was it a Commodore?
Probably. Very, very basic stuff, but that's what I had to use.
Without
And-
Lionel Richie.
Yeah, without Lionel, thank you. And I said, I did it for about 1.5 or 2 years. I said, this is boring. And then a friend of mine who was in the truck and trailer rental business said, well, why don't you come and work for us? We'll make you a rental lot manager, and you can rent trailers. And they shipped me off to the near south side of Chicago.
Worked south side of Chicago?
Yep, the near south and then the far south. I worked Cermak and Ashland, which is the near south, and then they shipped me down to 73rd and Stony Island.
Is that Cal City area?
Well, not quite that far south, but it was south, and it was quite a interesting experience. So,
And then Marty
working
steered you.
working down there and seeing the poverty and the crime and that kind of stuff.
Were you ever a victim of crime?
Yes, I was. An attempted armed robbery of my rental lot.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yes.
You were there?
I was there with about 7 I mean, nothing racial, but I was in a black neighborhood, and so the local population, 7 folks, came in and put a 38 to my head and said, "Okay, this is a robbery. Give me all your money."
7 guys came into your
7
rental
guys.
place? What were you
Yes.
renting?
U-Haul trucks.
U-Hauls.
The funny thing is, I had befriended a guy down there whose name was Jamie, and he was a boxer, a pro boxer. He used to box at the Drake Hotel in Chicago. I'd go down and see him. And he actually snuck in because he sensed something was going on when 7 guys run in to return a truck, you know. So he was in the crowd, and they put the gun to my forehead, you know, and he snuck in and went right next to me and said, "Okay, hold on. Anybody that has a problem with my friend Mr. Jim has a problem with me." And I swear to God, it's like the Red Sea parting. I mean, these guys backed off and they said, "We don't want any trouble."
Did he know who they were?
I'm sure he probably knew some of them, you know. But yeah, they just said, "Okay, sorry."
How old were you?
21, 22. Wait, I must have been.
Was
a
that your
little
last day
older.
on the job?
No. I must have been a little bit older because I'd done my stint at Crane first. Let's say 24 or 25, because I was down there a couple of years. And then when I was 26, then I came up to Janesville. So, yeah, 24, 25. And that kind of scared the shit out of me.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah, after you changed your pants, did you
Yeah.
call the police or no?
They said, "Do not call the police. We'll be gone."
Who said don't call the police?
We
The
don't-
robbers?
Listen to me. If they can do it once, they can do a lot worse than just.
All right, this is an interesting. I think this is an interesting testimonial here. A victim of violent crime makes in my opinion, astounding decision to not report having a gun pulled on him and being a victim of an armed robbery because of his fear of violence in that neighborhood. You at that point in time in that place, you felt as though those guys that came into your store ran that neighborhood, and that they had more power and influence than the government or the police.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's pretty common. I think
that's interesting because that would have been right around 1980. And most people would say that, most people looking back would think that those kind of problems might be prevalent today, but they're new problems. But they're not new problems.
No.
This kind of stuff, depending on where you are, what the neighborhood is, what the culture in that neighborhood is. So, yes, you decided that police are great, but they're not going to be here 24/7, and I still got to come back to work tomorrow and the next day, and okay. And so, did you have any other similar problems then down there?
No. They said if I kept my mouth shut and didn't say anything, I wouldn't have any problems. And
Now, do you think, for talking about it now, you might be in some kind of trouble?
Well, you know, I thought about that.
Do we need to blur your face?
Quite a little bit, but in the end, I made a decision.
Yeah.
To let
I'm
this
not.
go.
I'm not faulting you at all.
No,
And
you do what.
But that was one of the things that I think got me thinking. You know, I want to do something about this.
Well,
this type of situation.
Yeah.
I know we're not done with the full bio story, but this is a great jump off point. Does that make you understand, say, a rape victim not reporting to the police? Are there any parallels there, or do you think those are apples and oranges? I mean, what do you think?
I could definitely see parallels there,
And would you agree also that neighborhoods that devolve to that point, it becomes cyclical. Like it's very difficult to restore order in the neighborhood that has become crime has become that prevalent and intimidating to the residents that live there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. There was I believe it was a mosque right down the street, a mosque, and I think the They were called. You guys would know the name of this. Like they were a black Muslim group. They were very common in the late '70s and early '80s. Of a violent group, and I mean they were in the area, driving around. I saw them. I knew that they were there, and in fact, I saw these guys far more often than I saw Chicago PD.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, yeah, the neighborhood was certainly.
Yeah.
What was that group called?
There were a couple.
Is that the Lewis Farrakhan? No,
They were like the Blackstone Rangers.
They were there.
the Blackstone Rangers.
Blackstone
Yeah,
Rangers.
Blackstone Rangers.
Is this like are these gangs from like the old West?
Okay, young man. Just because you lived 100 miles away from there doesn't mean this stuff didn't exist. And I'm trying to think. There were several black culture gangs that were not okay. So when you say gang, I know that conjures up to most people the street gangs where one's got X turf, one's got white turf. Some of what Jim's really referring to, I think, is that there was some based in religion that sort of held influence over the whole community to an extent.
Right.
And I think that that's really what we're talking about. So there are a lot of factions going on, and you were just driving down there from the suburbs, just trying to rent trucks. It's a strange dynamic.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And so let's finish your story. You and I talked on the phone one day, and you said, I can't take this.
I can't rent
anymore.
you all.
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think we're hiring. And so I talked to the person who was in charge of hiring at the time, Terry Olson. And Terry said, wow, we're kind of it's a little bit late in the process, but write me up something on him, and then we'll take a look. So I wrote basically, Jim's a great guy. I've known him forever, blah, blah, blah. And gave that to Terry. And all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, I'm in the hallway, and there's Jim Conley and 3 other guys. And I'm like, oh, I guess he got hired.
That hiring process back in the mid 1900s when you guys got hired, that sounds a little looser than it is now.
Well, I did.
But we got better people.
Oh,
Obviously.
I did
We
take.
didn't hire people that, couldn't walk across the kitchen floor.
There was a huge written test and a psychological part and a physical agility.
okay.
But your letter, I'm sure, helped. I
So
do
you,
have to.
you proved yourself.
I proved myself. I do have to tell you
yeah,
one very funny story. I got a letter of recommendation from a family friend, Don Lease, who owned his own electronics business. It was a TV repair business called Northwest Electronics. And I asked him for a letter of recommendation because he's known, the family for years. He writes a very brief, very nice letter saying, I've known Jim for a long time, many years, 30 years. He's, no, it couldn't be 30 because I wasn't 30, 20 years, that he's a, very fine, upstanding young man. However, he doesn't have much electrical aptitude, and I would not hire him to repair my TV or something like that. So I'm not applying to be a TV repairman, but it was funny.
This is the guy.
Right.
This is the guy
Right.
that you decided to get a letter from.
Right.
All right.
It was
So it
funny.
just proves the old adage: if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So if you're a TV repair guy, then what other job would you be looking for?
Right.
TV repair.
Everything focuses
All
on
this
that.
guy wanted was the cops to fix his TV.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, anyways,
So you get on the job, and what did you think the job was going to be versus what you found out it really was?
well, it certainly was a lot more intense and serious. I mean, not that I knew it was a serious business, serious line of work, a serious career, but when you go to domestics and you go to bar fights, when people are bleeding and stuff, and not that I want to tell war stories, but this kind of demonstrates how kind of crazy it is. I went to an unwanted person call at a bar, identified the guy. He was drunk, said, okay, they don't want you here, you have to leave, And then this was maybe 11 o'clock at night, I was working third shift. At 2 o'clock or 2:30, we get a call of a badly injured individual, face bloodied, beat up so bad. Take him to call for the ambulance. Went up to Mercy to try to find out what happened. And when I'm checking his ID, of course I couldn't recognize him. He was so badly beaten. It's the same guy that we had as an unwanted party, 3.5 hours ago, and somebody just beat the ever-loving shit out of him, and I have no idea why. He has no idea what
He had
happened.
no idea what happened?
No idea what happened. And it was just crazy. I'm like, there's some serious stuff. I mean, he could have been killed.
Could have been killed.
Yeah, very serious stuff.
How often does that story replay itself? Where you find somebody who just pummeled
Yes.
into goo.
And either they don't know or they feign that they don't know.
No, I mean truly, like they really actually don't know.
But one of the big differences between that story then in the 80s and now is with cameras and personal phones with cameras. So often when we see those, we see them replayed 100 times, and we think this is a new phenomenon. Where that's if we had been able to zoom in on very early people, I'm sure they settled their differences with a rock in one hand and a club in the other. So it's really part of
We're
our DNA.
a violent bunch of primates, and somehow we've managed to make phones and magic 8-balls and make it through. It is, well, I mean, we could spend all day talking about evolution and how we ended up here.
Did that experience, did you feel as though you should have done something to stop that, intervened in that? Did you feel a certain responsibility for?
I felt like I could have done a better job finding maybe a responsible party to take control of this guy. But at the time, he was drunk. He wasn't incapacitated. He was drunk, and I ID'd him, left a short report. No warrants or anything on him. You run him, no warrants.
Yep.
Hit the road.
Yep.
Don't come back here, and you let it go. Obviously, it was summertime. You're always super busy, so you don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time with someone. But afterwards, I said, "Boy, I probably should have done something." Even though he was intoxicated, but you feel bad,
Could have, yeah.
Yeah, could have, probably could have, but,
Yeah. But the same scenario plays itself out again. The likelihood that you're going to... Did you end up changing your tactics or, like how you responded to the next drunk guy?
Not really.
No. Because there's so many drunk guys.
Right, yeah. There's so many. And, you do what your SOP basically says. You run him for warrants and checks. You make sure he's not wanted. And as long as he's not incapacitated, he can still care for himself. You solve the problem, which is he's unwanted at this establishment.
And you do not have the authority to take him into...
No, you don't, because, right.
Exactly.
So,
and by the way, it's not like it's a piece of furniture. It's a person that's probably angry because they're getting kicked out,
right.
Intended on drinking some more. So they're not a yes person. They're more of a no person. You're saying, look, you've got two choices. You resist and go to jail, or you leave the premises. He leaves the premises, but he very well may find another place to drink. Now we get back into the same scenario again.
Yeah.
And in this case, somebody took exception with his mouth, possibly, or maybe somebody just saw him drunk and thought he's an easy target.
Now, I recall a similar case that came through the Bureau, and I may get some of the facts incorrect here, but it basically amounted to intoxicated man in his apartment, and he has a history of alcohol abuse, and patrol officers respond to his apartment, and he's not incapacitated. He is intoxicated. He's not supposed to drink. We've had a number of run-ins with him. And one of the officers finds his alcohol and hides it in his, so he can't drink anymore, so that so that at least for the evening, he's protected. And of course, after the police leave, because they have no authority to detain him, he discovers that he can't find his alcohol, so he goes out on foot to go. Presumably, this is guesswork, but he leaves his apartment, and he's found a couple of days later frozen in the field across the street because he apparently fell down on his way to try and get more. This is presumption, but there again, the best intentions, trying to help the guy out by keeping the alcohol from him. And he wanders off into the field, trips in the cold, and freezes to death.
Yeah.
Your story isn't quite that horrific, but
Well,
it is the ultimate catch-22. You try and help somebody, and it turns out that people have agency, and they make decisions that are not in their best interest at all. Mm-hmm. And our responsibility is limited to what we can reasonably accomplish, and you can try and help somebody if they refuse to be helped, and by that continue to drink or continue to put themselves in a situation that's
right. It could be drugs. It could be bad relationship that they stay in that is slowly gnawing away. You've thrown them. Lifelines they've either ignored, or for a while they did it and then they didn't do it. And you sort of stand by, and Eric and I were talking about this previously, but in most communities, you have future contacts with the same person. And in a lot of cases, you see their downslide going from bad to worse to horrible to, just assuming that they're going to be dead, that they're gradually killing themselves. And
sometimes you have to be a little creative.
Right, you do what you can, but ultimately you're forced to handle each incident almost in, particularly when you're on patrol, resolve that one incident and go on to the next. But one of the things that we were trying to explore is there not baggage from each of those that you take with you? And does that not add up over the years, where you think back, or at least when you look at now suddenly you're there 20 years, you've gone to numerous of these circumstances. Do you walk in the same way that you did 20 years earlier, or is it a whole different ball game? And then do you start sorting people out as to possibly savable, or this one's redeemable? Yes. Maybe redeemable, unredeemable.
Hopeless.
I mean, what are there any things that you saw along those lines in your evolving career?
Well, I can say that as time went on, I found myself becoming hardened to most types of calls, especially the drunk calls or the drug calls. I did not have as much patience. I wanted to still do my job and do what I thought was right at the time, but my empathy level had certainly decreased over time.
Now, do you think that your agency, that there was some 8-hour or 2-day training that they could have given you that would have suddenly changed that perspective and made you and cleared that up? Or do you think that that's if you shovel shit 8 hours a day, eventually you're just going to get that attitude? I mean, what do you think?
Right. Well, what I think and what we used to get written up for is the old 12-6ing, when the two squads would meet facing opposite directions. I think, we used to get in trouble for doing that, but really we were decompressing about the last call we had been on and talking to someone who fully understood what you just went through, And to me, those were valuable conversations.
But that was very, and I feel like the attitude has changed. Like I sort of caught the tail end of those years when I started in the 90s, which was basically like, man up, man up. It's the job. It's the job. You know.
Right.
So what? Deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Cry? Like, let's let's be men out here. Come on, let's be men. Right?
Sure.
I think that attitude has changed substantially. And if you were like, you know what, I just need somebody to talk to for a minute. Fucking talk to? Call your mom. Go call, you know what I mean? That was and maybe I'm wrong, but I definitely had that sense from some of the people that used to work, Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Are you wrong or are you wrong?
Would you grab me another one, please?
Did you hear that? He wants one.
Please.
All right,
you.
so that's a good point, because one thing when we're talking, Eric, you have tender years.
Yeah.
You have to remember that when we talk about, I started in 1978, Jim started in 1981. In 1981, there were people who were still on the department and training us that started in the early 60s. Okay, so however they saw the world in the early 60s. Yes, and then well, the longest chief until now was born in 64. I mean, started in 64. So you have to remember that you're jumping in to a moving.
We have generations
Yes.
of experience
Yes.
here.
And
you can tap into the people that worked in the 60s.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly. And we've had the benefit, and maybe you did too, but in the Detective Bureau, occasionally we could rummage through, find these old written reports that were from the 60s, the 50s, and you could see what level of logic they used in an investigation.
And some of them were pretty insightful.
Yes,
and
with none of the tools that we have today.
Yeah.
I mean, basically it's like grab all the video, get the cell phone records, and call me in the morning. I mean, that's almost how things are run now. This was all, we went down to the bus station. We pulled out a couple of guys down there. We talked to them. Why were they in town?
Every case, you were just a confession away. Because that's really all you had was fingerprints, eyewitnesses, and confessions.
Yes. And confessions, some pre-Miranda, some post-Miranda without Miranda. But it was supposedly whatever was appropriate for the time. That's what was happening. So that whole culture was sliding along, and you just drop into it, and so there's a little naivete, I think, by some people who thinks that but now it was 1980, and none of that other stuff should have been done anymore. Well, first of all, a lot of that stuff on the street was working, so of course it's not abandoned. It's like, this is how we handle this problem. So you learn that from someone like, this really does work. I might tweak it a little, but and that's sort of a point that I wanted to get to. Did you learn from your coworkers, some elders, some the same, and then did you find yourself trying to emulate, or taking parts of what they did and incorporate it into your worldview? How did that sort of evolve? If you can, being the history major that you are, you can probably talk about this from a historical perspective.
Well, I'm not ancient, so the historical perspective is a bit limited. But yes, I did learn. I did try to pass it on when I was a field training, officer. I know one incident which I have to mention, very, very specific, because it is so relevant, especially today. Went to a domestic. I was the first guy there. Separate them. At that time, of course, you want to keep the guy in sight and the female in sight, but this was before I was really cognitively aware. I had the guy stand outside, Now my backup, I don't know where the hell he is, and this guy is outside with his car right in the driveway. Now, a post-incident review would have said, Jim, he can go to his car, get a gun, he can get a knife, he can do a club, he can do whatever. You want to keep him in your side, keep her in your side, keep them separated till your backup comes in and find out what happened. Well, as it turns out, it was a dispute over child custody. They had a 9-month-old baby. He wanted to take the kid. She said, no, I'm the mother. He stays with me, blah, blah, blah. I was trying to rationally apply logic and convince him that, you know, she's the mother, the child would be better off with the mother. And then my backup came, Officer Thompson, and believe it or not, he goes, hey, you guys are not married. If you don't have any paperwork that says you get custody at a certain time, you're out the door. It's her kid. You acknowledge it's her kid. The child stays. That's it. Done. And I mean, within like 2 minutes, the guy was leaving, you know. But I was trying to rationalize how the child would be better off with the mother.
You were being Judge Wapner and just trying to negotiate some sort of a.
And then
some sort of
a senior officer comes and says, "Look, unless you got paperwork that says, you know, something different, in an unmarried situation, unless the woman is impaired or there's some reason why the child can't stay, she gets the baby. Period. You know."
And how old were you in this call, you think?
I was only been on by myself a couple years, so maybe 30. You know,
30.
30, yeah.
And what level of training did you receive in child custody law and civil law regarding, zero? But yet here you are, just out in the community, attempting to negotiate a reasonable conclusion to a matter that is, I don't even know this, but I'm sure that there's volumes of civil law, both statutorily and case law, on child custody and parental rights. But yet here you are, a representative of the law, at least in the eyes of the people.
Right.
Completely unqualified. We're just not even, like, you're not even in the ballpark of qualified, other than just like what you saw work last time. You know,
Right.
Like you saw Thompson showed up and he said, "No, that's the way it goes." And you had a saying that said, "The Constitution to most people."
Right. It's Oliver Wendell Holmes, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it says, for most people, the law of the land is the Constitution of the United States. No, okay. The law of the land may be the Constitution of the United States, but for most of us, it's whatever the cop on the beat tells us it is.
Yeah.
And
That's a perfect example. I don't know if he's right or wrong about that. I feel like that's probably pretty, unless you have a court order, we just don't get involved.
Right.
And
makes
ultimately,
sense, you know.
the patrol function is, in about 15 minutes, resolve whatever the problem is.
Right.
and get out of
Band-aid
it.
this shit.
Yeah.
Because you're going to another case.
Yes.
Because they would just, particularly if it was Officer Thompson, LB, then it was second shift, probably summer, and the complaints just back up and are held. And
Right.
they'll start calling for you. Can you break? Can you break? Can you break? And it's like, well, let's see, the Christmas tree is knocked over, all the presents are broken, somebody's urinating in the sink. I can go to another one.
Yeah,
So,
we're good here. The guy left. We're fine.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So so again, great series of examples. Now you're roughly 30. And why does this interview sound like we're doing the Joe Dirt interview? Like, I want to hear more about Joe
I
Dirt.
love that movie.
So all right. So now you're about 30, and are you starting to amass a certain amount of baggage about people, and would I have done something differently, better before? Is any of that happening, or are you now at a point where it's like, I get paid for 40 hours, I show up for 40 hours, whatever happens? Because I think some officers seem to have been able to do that. I didn't. I don't think Eric did. I'm guessing you didn't. I know you didn't, but I'm asking you anyway. It's just not, I think it's not that way, but I'm asking you, how did that progress for you? I mean, what were you doing besides sitting car to car and talking to other officers? What were you doing to sort of relieve that? I know you were into boating at the time.
I was into boating. I'm a huge boat fan. These certainly helped,
Right. Yeah.
get through that stuff. I wish there were many times when I wish, why don't I go back and take some law enforcement courses? This is my career. I enjoy it. I love it. The first 20 years, I really, truly enjoyed practically every single day. I look forward to going to work.
To the listener, I think that's going to sound like contradictory. I agree with you, but how can you both enjoy it and watch on a daily basis the degradation of the human fiber?
That is a good subject to dive into, because as you're saying that, I was thinking, we're sort of collectively, it sounds like we're complaining.
Right.
It sounds like, but I loved every day at work. I never thought it was work. You wouldn't have necessarily have had to pay me to go and do. I probably would have had to get a job, so I wouldn't have been free to do much of it. But honestly, for all of its negative, for all of the negativity that rubbed off on you, I loved doing it. I thought it was a great job. And there wasn't a day that I went to work that I didn't want to go to work. So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, there are, like I said before, when you're able to put your hand on the hot stove and it doesn't burn anymore, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. No, it's not.
Yeah, right.
Your hand's still fucking burning. You just don't feel it.
Well, if I can just say something really quick, at briefing, this sort of, I think, epitomizes what you just said. At briefing, right before we were going out on the street, one of our supervisors, I remember like it was yesterday, it had to be about 1980, he said, gentlemen, I'm about to send you out to the greatest show on earth, and you're getting paid for it. And because each day, you didn't know. Was it going to be boring?
Right.
Was it going to be crazy? Were you going to have one complaint that took the whole night? Were you suddenly going to go from complaint to complaint to complaint? Were you going to find yourself in the enviable position of being your second or third car on a one-man call, so you just stood around and really held somebody's coat? How was that all going to go, or was it going to be a mixture of all those things? And to me, that was, because I think the positive thing you think of at the end of the day, if it wasn't me, who was going to be there? Who was going to be there? Yeah. And by the way, there's certain guys that I work with that you wouldn't have wanted to show up, and there's other guys who maybe would have been better than me. But I mean, I'm what you got, and it's better than nothing, right? Because
now there's a certain amount of nobility in the idea that I'm the line between civility and chaos. I represent that line. I think that can become overinflated in some people in the job, and they start to see themselves as, greater than what they actually are. I mean, you have to take that. It is true that is you, that's what you're doing, but you have to take it with an ounce of humility, in that I'm going to do my fucking best to try not to fuck up, because there is no way not to screw this job up. At some point, you
demonstrated that you send someone in with virtually no experience which applies to all of us, and you're asked to do a King Solomon type decision. Right. What do we do with the baby? Cut it in half. I guess I read that story.
Long ways or 14, 15 times a day, you are faced with a brand new, it's like a roll of the dice. Oh, now I get to be a traffic accident reconstructionist. Roll of the dice. Oh, now I get to be a child psychiatrist. Roll of the dice. Oh, now I need to be a photographer and take really good pictures of these, pry marks on this door frame so they can match,
Yes. Right.
There's no way to do it all perfectly.
I'll tell you what kept me going.
What?
And this might sound corny, but Thanksgiving, Christmas, when it was your shift, you had to work, and the LT brings in a turkey or a ham, and he's cooking it in one of the back rooms, and everybody brings in a little dish, and it's that sense of camaraderie, the law enforcement family. I mean, even though I didn't confide in a lot of people, didn't talk too much at the end of a call, yes, you talk to them a little bit, but just that sense of family, knowing that if something were really serious to go down, they would have your backs. And I had great supervisors, and that kind of made up for all the shitty calls. And,
there is
all the bullshit.
Yeah. There is that I'm sure other careers have a similar. I'm sure emergency room, teachers even. Anybody has that. This job is just a little bit different in that the range and scope of expectation, if you stop and think about it, is just stupid. It's just what is being asked of really blue collar workers.
Yes. And the other thing, and it's just you don't even think of it as being a part of the equation, but everybody else in the criminal justice system judges people as they stand before them in their office, the courtroom, in an emergency room, etc. It's the cops who are standing in their house. And when they tell you a story and you look around, like they'll say something like, sorry, I didn't get a chance to clean up. And you know that you could call in one of Jim's friends in anthropology to come in here and say, okay, this is about the 4-year line. Now we're down to the 6-year line, because it's never been cleaned up. So, you'll later on in a courtroom or something, you'll hear a social worker, or social workers go out, but you'll hear a report come in where it says that, well, John has really been trying to do this. We were there last night. The place doesn't look any different at all. As a matter of fact, he was doing this, and this, and it's like, that's just not true. But so we're standing right in their front room, and even if you have a search warrant, you have every right in the world to be in there. I always used to feel like, in a sense, I'm a guest here, so it's still their house, no matter how humble this is. And you'd see, there were people who lived in apartments that the place was so dirty that they'd have a couple blankets and a pillow and they'd be sleeping over in the corner. Now, they're not homeless like we talk about today, but they're not functioning properly. But that's still their turf. That's still their thing. So you're in somebody's house, you're going to take control, but you still have to have some level of empathy, some level of understanding, trying to use a full spectrum of whatever authority you have to solve their problem, and do that in about 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe. Because as we all know, I don't care how nice your supervisor was, 203.
That's right.
When you take a call, we're
Time to
stacked
clear.
up here, and all the other patrol guys in 204 or 208 are like, where the hell's Conley? I had to take a call on his complaint, and they're gonna go talk to you about that in the locker room.
One night,
Yeah.
I'm in training with John Olson. The supervisor on the shift said, remember guys, 20 minutes on a call. That's plenty, 20 minutes on the call. We got on the car, and John, of course, was like, it depends on the call. And then almost immediately, we get sent to a sexual assault that occurred at a house on Lynn Street. The victim was at the hospital. John and I spent the entire shift, talking with her, going to her apartment, collecting evidence, locating the suspect, arresting the suspect, getting a statement from the suspect. And about 6 hours in, John said, do you think we're over that 20 minutes? But it's a ridiculous, just arbitrary, like 20 minutes on that call.
Right.
It depends on that call.
Sure.
Yeah, that's legit. Like, that's what we were told. 20 minutes on a call.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you can't clear it up in 20 minutes, we'll get somebody else.
Right,
coming in.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I recall a supervisor, by luck of the draw, I'm working the front desk one night, and I get my 20-minute dinner break, and I walk away, and when I come back, the captain who's running the shift, is sitting at a desk. He's got his feet up. He's smoking a cigarette, all okay at the time. And I hear him on the phone saying to someone, did we help you move in? And there's a pause. And then he goes, okay, have a good night. And he hangs up the phone. He hears me coming. He crushes out a cigarette. He gets up and he starts to walk out. And I was just curious. And also, these things tend to come back up again. So I wanted to know what this was about. So I said, excuse me, Captain, what was that about? And he goes, there's a woman. She's having trouble with her boyfriend that she lives with. And she wanted us to come over there and stand by while she got her stuff. And I asked her, ma'am, did we help you move in? And that was roughly 1979, maybe, as to where we are today.
Now, we still do not do standbys, which is what we,
Yes.
well, unless that's changed the last couple of years. But again, it matters, the case in particular. Like, we don't know, like, is she one of these people like Jim who didn't report? I'm sorry, Jim. Who didn't report
the crime?
a series of crimes that were perpetrated against her, and she's more than ample evidence and information for a restraining order, but she just never did it, and now she wants to go get her shit, and but we didn't help her move in.
At that time, we did. We often did. Depending on who the supervisor was, they say, "Yeah, go over there and stand by. We don't want to go back for a domestic." Okay, makes sense. But
Now
not this particular supervisor.
We went to
there's a
you go to the standby, right, and then she pulls up, and it's, she sees that you're there, so she launches into the guy.
Sure, yeah, no,
You
absolutely.
fucking piece of because we're there.
Mhm.
Now she's got
Right, she's got her big brothers there.
Yeah,
got her
yeah.
bag, got her bag. Yeah, so there's no perfect. There's no
no.
perfect recipe.
What?
Just do what you can.
The world isn't perfect.
No. Yeah, we're dealing with whatever.
All right, Jim. Tell us how you tried to kill yourself.
We don't have enough time.
I thought he was going to say which time. This was going to be really interesting.
I could have.
When you drove the car into the big tree, tell us what happened.
Well, you know what happened there.
No, honestly, I know it was on Blackbridge.
Yes, in Sousa.
And you were going to, I don't even know where you're going
I
to.
was going to help
You had
Wally.
a-
Scott Wassmiller was
Okay.
at Milton Avenue Pub in Dudley. And he was like a domestic and he wanted backup. And so I was training Mark Roloff
Okay.
and we were flying. And then we were going up Blackbridge.
Yep.
And probably doing 45 because it's right at shift change. So it's 5 to 11 o'clock, summertime. It was June.
45. Jim, I think the statute of limitations is up. Go
Okay,
ahead.
maybe 50. But anyways, I see a Corvette. I see a car. I didn't know what it was at the time, a Corvette. And he's like pulling away from me. And I know I'm doing 45, 50. And I'm like, holy shit, that guy's speeding. So I flip on the reds and accelerate to try to catch him, to get him to slow down. Because it's, 25 zone as you get closer to town.
Yeah.
And so as I approach Sousa, the car slows down, pulls like it's going to pull on the right side of the road and stop for me. So I figure, okay, I got to go and help another officer who's requesting.
So you weren't going to pull him
assistance.
over.
I was not. My intention was only to get him to slow down. So the car goes to pull over. I go around to pass, still had the reds on, I'm going to go around to pass. Judicious use of the siren at nighttime, so I did not have the siren on. As I go around to pass, then at the last minute, this guy makes a sharp left, cuts me off, and ricochets me into the tree. And they knew that was absolutely true because the damage on my squad car was right side damage as well as full frontal damage because of the impact from the tree.
With the tree. Was it ever?
Jim, let's parse this out a little bit. And so, in terms of a full-size vehicle traveling at 55 versus an old oak tree, who came out ahead on that one?
Well, the tree is permanently damaged.
All right, so
tell you that.
you got your licks in.
Yes, I did score a few rounds. I didn't win the fight, but I scored on a few
Now,
rounds.
What year was this?
88
88. What were you driving?
or 86. A Celebrity. Brand new
Chevy
Chevy
Celebrity.
Celebrity. They're the best squad cars we.
Airbag?
No, the
I
whole
don't even think they were dreamt of yet.
the whole engine compartment came back into my lap and crushed my left
Yeah, I
leg.
don't think celebrities are known for their.
No.
Were you wearing a seatbelt?
Yes.
Was
Seatbelt?
Roloff wearing a seatbelt?
Yes.
Was he hurt?
No, he got a cut on his arse, if I can use the Irish term. And how that happened is beyond me because he's sitting in the seat.
It was that brick that he right before you hit the
I
tree.
mean, the windshield. I mean, the whole front of the car is smashed, and yet his ass was cut. They took him to the hospital.
All right, that's interesting.
Checked him out, and they have no clue how that happened.
So as I'm understanding this person thought you were pulling them over,
They thought so. They pulled over to the curb, right?
and then
Why
he
did they
doesn't.
pull back out?
Yeah, I don't fully understand. What did he say?
Well, here's what I believe, and it all happened very quickly. But I believe that there were two occupants. I knew that, male and a female. However, in light of everything, I can't remember who was driving, but I believe the guy was driving. He was revoked. It was his car. He was revoked. He says, I can't get pulled over. So he's pulling over. He's thinking, not totally stopped, but pulling over. And then I go around to pass, and he goes, I'm not going to get a ticket for after rev. And he decides to make a sharp left and
He was going to
scooters.
take off.
He was going to take off.
He was going to take off, not knowing you're blowing past him.
Not knowing I'm going to go around him, correct.
What injuries did you have?
Severely broken left leg. Spent a month in the hospital and 6 months off work, and came back sometime in January of the following year. This happened.
Could
in
you
June.
could you have gone out on medical disability?
It's possible. It's possible, but I did like my job.
Yeah,
You know.
because we had more celebrities, and you had not wrecked any of the other ones. So
That is true.
Like,
That's the
there's a-
only one. However, I was in another crash. Again, totally not my fault. I was turning left. I was westbound.
Wait a minute. We haven't determined that the one that took the tree was not your fault.
A
Go ahead.
A lieutenant from the sheriff's department cited
Okay.
the other person,
Yeah.
and
Excellent.
check with the 8 ball.
so
Was that
not
Jim's
my
fault?
Yes, but I did.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
The 8 ball
Jim,
has spoken.
we can't.
I'm
All right.
gonna burn
You know,
that.
You go to Gypsies. We have an 8 ball. That's
Okay.
we have a lower
All
budget
right.
than you.
So you were in another
I
accident.
was westbound on Mount Zion at a green light, going to turn left and go south on Milton Avenue.
Yeah.
Witnesses there, and a lady, an older gal. I slowly enter the intersection. I had the green, and her light is clearly red. Boom, runs the red light, plows into me.
When did that happen?
That happened, I would say, like 2 years after my other
Jesus, did you feel like
Accident.
you were?
Did that hit you on the driver's side?
driver's side, yeah.
Oh, my.
Driver's side, yeah. And the funny thing is, the lady behind me said she sort of knew me. She knew who I was. She worked at a grocery store or something, and my leg's cramping. And she said, I'm sorry. She
Hey,
said,
it's all right. It's all right.
she goes, you entered the intersection, your light was green, it had been green for several seconds. So that car was far enough back, there's no way it shouldn't have had time to stop, But she obviously, this older lady driving just wasn't paying attention, And she came out and smashed me. She goes, I saw the whole thing. For about 10 years after that, when she would see me out, how you doing? How you doing? She always,
Now, the woman who
funny.
hit you, did you get out of the squad and hit her with your shillelagh or anything? Or?
well, funny story. I believe the woman that hit me was worked at a clinic, not a clinic that I used to go to, but worked at a clinic, and then I wound up dating someone from that clinic, and that lady said, I think I'm the guy that that
I
hit
smashed
you
into
in the
that guy.
spot. Yeah, so it had come kind of full circle in a manner of speaking.
I'm surprised to hear that, Jim.
So that's my story, man,
All right. Well,
and I live to tell it.
Good point.
yeah, because that, in all honesty, that could have been very bad.
Could have been, especially a driver's side impact. It doesn't.
I meant the tree.
Oh,
but
the
that
tree.
one too. I mean,
I'm talking.
good grief, Jim. I mean,
Okay.
you're just
The tree could have been very
lucky to
bad.
be alive.
Yes, the tree could have been very bad.
Any other near-death experiences?
Well, I was shot at twice while working for Janesville. PD.
Shot at twice in one night, or like
Twice
two
during
rounds
my
fired?
career. Twice during my career, which is not bad for mid-sized.
How do I not know this? How do I not know this?
Well, when you're just a good old beat cop, you're out there
Just
doing
taking bullets,
your job,
taking bullets.
Yeah.
All right, what happened?
Well, briefly, one was a domestic on North Jackson, and a lady, I pulled up, and she must have seen me, and she starts firing with a deer hunting rifle, and I took cover on the side of a house, like on a good, what I thought was a sufficient angle, so it'd have to penetrate not only this side of the house, but this side of the house as well, so I thought it was safe. Yeah, but she hit a few rounds into the house, and then as it turns out, everything was okay because another officer kind of knew her and talked her out, and she came out, gave herself up, and she was clearly like crazy, and we took her in on
just had a little moment there where I wanted to
took her
shoot
in
that guy.
on a 5115. I believe we did charge her not with like attempted homicide or anything, but discharging a weapon in the city because she was so far out of it, crazy. And I
Well,
think,
probably some reckless level.
yeah,
of discharge.
not even like a reckless level.
Really?
Yeah, I talked to I don't know who the supervisor was.
She was really crazy.
but she was nuts. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally
Oh.
nuts. And so they just,
Right.
She'd have to be
Still
crazy
charge
to
it,
shoot
but-
at you, Jim.
of course. I mean,
You're
you're
the
right. They
nicest
should
man I
have
know.
charged her with some kind of crime.
Sure, because
Yeah.
I mean, then
Right,
you
reckless
then you
use of
sort out
weapon.
just how crazy she is, or
Yeah,
she's crazy like a
but-
fox. Yeah.
But I don't believe she was charged with anything serious, and I think she did go away. for what-
Okay, so you get out of the car, and what do you hear? A gunshot, or do you
Yeah.
see her with a gun?
No, I hear a gunshot.
And you're like, I wonder if they're shooting at me.
So
No, seriously, like you.
So
So
you
you hear a
call it,
gunshot.
hey, somebody should.
well, I did hear the gunshot, so I ran and got what I thought was good cover, and then there were a couple more shots. It was crazy. One thing I did, which I thought was really strange, is I thought this was going to go horribly bad, and I had dispatch send an ambulance down at the end of Jackson to block the road off, and because I said, this is not going to go well, and
You knew who she was.
no, I had no clue. I had never had any contact. Just the fact that
What was the call?
domestic, but the guy, I don't remember what happened to the guy, whether he left the house prior to her grabbing the rifle,
Oh, okay.
because
He wasn't dead.
no, he was fine, and she just started shooting, and it was just a chaotic scene. But I remember requesting the ambulance. I said, and have them block the road. Don't let any traffic through because I'm taking rounds. Like, what the fuck? This guy's taking rounds, So, I mean, it was crazy. And then the other time was with Strumman. We're going to a domestic on the west side of town, and we're walking up to the front door. Of course, you don't walk directly in front of the door, so we're each off on the side. And all of a sudden, shotgun blast right through the door, right towards us, So we turned tail, ran, got the hell out of there. And in that case, when dispatch found out who it was, Dave Burke knew her and got on.
It was a woman again.
It was a woman. The
So
two
woman-
times I've been shot at.
You've been shot at by
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
women.
And so
Huh.
got a hold of it, and everything turned out. That person was
Crazy
arrested,
also. Right.
arrested.
Also crazy?
I don't know about crazy, but at least there were criminal charges.
Okay.
That time.
Jesus, Jim, I did not know either one of those stories. I've known you for almost damn near 30 years.
Yeah. So
You've been repressing these things?
I've had a full life.
Luckily.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
Jesus.
All right, well,
I've got nothing to compare to that.
We got to wrap because we're going to go.
We do.
Too long otherwise.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, gentlemen.
For discussing all of this. I feel like you have more stories, so maybe we'll have you back down.
Now this does sound like Joe Dirt.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm learning stuff, so.
I have one very short, funny story.
Yes.
Yep.
Which
Tell
is
it.
humorous as hell.
Throw it in.
Second shift, we were going to try to assist the drug unit with a surveillance. And this was a house near the public library. And the LT said, make contact with the library, get a key to the back door so our drug guys can go in at night and do surveillance on this suspected drug house. I go there, I ask for the head librarian. I said, hi, I'm Officer CONLEY, Janesville PD. We have a suspected drug house in the neighborhood. We'd like to use the library, which I believe is a public library, so we can run surveillance at night. And she said to me, how do I know you're really a Janesville police officer? Now, I'm in complete uniform. I
wouldn't buy
have
it.
my Smith & Wesson. I mean, everything is legit. And I said, well, my squad car is outside. I'm in uniform. Everything about me is real. But I said, why don't you call down to the department? I won't even give you the phone number, but you look it up, call down, talk to a supervisor. So she calls down, speaks with Hack, and she goes, do you really have an Officer CONLEY that's down here trying to get the keys to the library? And Hack said, well, I'm not so sure it's CONLEY if he hasn't asked you out yet. Oh,
He's
my
like,
God.
who are you people?
Yeah.
You
Are
want
you
to get
guys
to the
real?
library, and this guy.
So finish this up. Did you get the key, Joe?
I got the key.
All
Yes,
right.
yes.
All right. Did you have to surrender your Arrowhead library card in order to get it? They lent it to
Oh, my
you?
God.
Okay. Well,
I got the keys to the castle.
She got hacked.
Yep, she got hacked. So
Oh, Jimmy. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for having me over.
We've had a
Thanks-
wonderful time. I hope you had a wonderful time.
Thanks for the free beers. It's always good hashing old stories.
I'm sorry for giving you such a hard time all of these years.
That's
All
okay.
of these years.
Yeah, we didn't realize what a sensitive guy he was.